العرض المرئي التالي حول جوهر إدارة سلسلة التوريد من منظور إيجاد القيمة المضافة، يقدمه الأستاذ عمرو حابس، نائب المدير التنفيذي لDHL. هو الوقت المحدد لهذا العرض 30 دقيقة، لكن نأمل الإيجاز.
أكيد. Well, assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. Unfortunately, my slides are going to be in English, so you just need to bear with me. Actually, I'm going to take it from what the panel discussion stopped, and the embedded messages were from Dr. Rameh and His Excellency as well, Ustad Ahmed Al-Hagbani. So I have a few questions with you. Basically, I just need your interaction with me. So basically, we do spend most of our times in board meetings, in mid-management meetings, discuss always about goals, ideas, vision, and successes, and how the company move forwards. And I just need your interaction with me. Do you think that is enough? If you think so, just please raise your hand. So you do agree with me. The answer is no. That is not enough. And luckily, the answer needs us to reflect on the essence, on the fundamentals of the supply chain, where we need to be brought back to the past and just rethink of whatever we have done so far, and we've been deviated from the route that we have decided to embark. So my topic today is beyond, how to move forwards and reach beyond by just reflecting on the essence of supply chain. The other question is, anyone knows who this guy is? His name is written there, but do you know who he is? Well, his name is Keith Oliver, and during a discussion, an interview with another gentleman called Arnold Krasdorf back in 1982. This gentleman, Arnold, is a former consultant of Booz Allen and Hamilton, and at that day there was the official birth of the term supply chain management. In that interview, the discussion just focused on filling the gaps between where the strategies of companies are and what are the best practices are in that companies. So, during the birth in 1982 of the term SCM, the supply chain management, it took the industry straight 8 years to digest and reflect and be flexible with the new term. So in 1990, the SCM became a buzzword in the supply chain industry, and people started to digest what the SCM is. And we have one fundamental purpose to fulfill if we are willing to adapt into the SCM. That is, to fill the gap or to just bring from isolation the supply chain management and just embed it within the corporate strategy, which was missing at that time. And I have another question for you. If you still think that is missing today, or we have fulfilled it in the country, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So, what is the purpose of supply chain management? And this is crucially important for the private sector to reflect on. So what is the purpose of supply chain management in the year 2017? Basically, we have three paradigms or three parameters that we need to mingle or merge together. The first one is the business strategy. When we embark into a new journey of having a new business, we just focus on the business strategy in terms of what kind of products or what kind of services we're going to provide to the end users and customers. Basically, we're talking about either we have a least cost services or products, or we have a differentiated products and services, or we just have a focused services that we can provide to the customers. And when we are talking about the least cost, we have examples like 9-Air in China, the airways industry. We have the JetBlue in US, who offers really competing prices in terms of least cost. And we have here maybe a sort of least cost when we're talking about FlyNAS. So basically that is the first component that any business or entrepreneur has to focus in at the very beginning. The second component is the organizational strategy. And that takes care of how do we function within the business environment, with the competitors, how to react to a certain paradigm, a certain domain. And finally, and most importantly, is how to mingle and merge the supply chain strategy within the other paradigms I spoke about. And that is the ultimate message we do have in the year 2017. So this what should happen within the board level, that we embed the supply chain strategy into our strategies because of so many reasons that I'm going to demonstrate in the coming slides. And the other question, where do we stand among all of these elements in the Saudi market? And please, if you do agree that we're doing excellent job, please raise your hand. Okay? If you think that we have kind of an average performance in the sector of supply chain, please raise your hand. Thank you. You are helping me. This is a PhD study. Thank you very much. And those who think that we are not doing a good job and we're just exercising below the average, please share with me. Okay, thank you. Well, let's be quite optimistic. In the year 2030, we're going to have a fourth one. That's going to be up in the list, just optimistically speaking. So now, maybe this is quite interesting because I'm going to share with you a few facts in the Saudi market and in the global market as well. Unfortunately, we don't have solid numbers generated from the Saudi market. So we had spent some kind of, I think, a fair effort just to be a sort of understanding what's going on in the market. So just imagine that almost 40% of the companies still consider supply chain management as a standalone entity. And that's an answer to the questions why so many companies, startup companies, small, from the SMEs, just struggle at the beginning or just end up in a huge failure. And the reason is the absence of the supply chain being merged within their strategies. Also, just imagine that around 1/5 of the companies in Saudi Arabia just actively engaging with the supply chain paradigm. I'm talking here about designing a proper networks, and getting really involved with the supply chain. And also 80% of companies that constantly achieve higher growth than the sector's average are adapting the supply chain management or the SCM. And this is a huge fact. Here I'm talking only, unfortunately, I'm not talking about the SMEs, I'm just talking about the big companies. Unfortunately, most or maybe 99% of the small startup companies, they're missing this huge fact and they end up struggling or being in the failure zone. Paradoxically, only less than 9% just be in the current, just move in the current, and they just make it by just luck. So here is another embedded message to those businessmen, entrepreneurs, and SMEs, top leaders, to just rethink of whatever they're doing in this paradigm. And luckily, when the companies think of cost reduction, and that is a problem that we have as of today because of the economic condition and because of certain circumstances globally and locally as well. So most of the companies just focus and pay attention to cost reduction. But on the other hand, companies who excel in defining proper SCM always experience 15% less in cost reduction. And this is a fact. This is a result of a study. And the reason that those companies just think ahead of competitors and they invest and they just bear the pain at the beginning, then they experience the profits later on. Also, the research suggests that by the year 2015 or 16, 90% of the companies will become customer-centric approach. They will adopt this kind of approach. And we have certain examples when we're talking about Jarir, for example. They just recently developed their sales channels so you can have the products bought through the online channels and get it delivered at your home. And this a huge step forward when we're talking about the Vision 2030, because that is really aligned of what we call building barriers to customers to penetrate into your territory. So another reason is the law of diminishing return. And please just pay attention with me here. This is what we experience in the market. When we start at the bottom of this graph, we think that the more resources we invest in our operations, then the more impact and return we're gonna gain. But the studies show that you will reach a certain point where the excess, and that is the optimum where you cannot put more resources into your operations, because once you do so, you're gonna step into the misleading span. So the more, and this is a problem I've seen myself in the past when I was part of operating companies, that we put resources, but we end up having deteriorated operations. And then we keep putting resources till we reach to something called the yield point, where the more resources we put, the more deteriorated operations we end up with. On the contrary, when we apply this law of diminishing return, but on an opposite direction, when we talk about the cost reduced per se, then again, some of the companies just ought to go into cost reduction exercise, and then they start experiencing a return and impact, and that is just immediate ones. So again, the more cost they reduce, they will reach into the optimum yield point, and after that they're gonna step unintentionally and without realizing into the misleading span, where they're gonna end up of losing, deteriorating, or even failing the whole business units they have. The other thing is the bounded awareness, and that is a problem embedded with our cultures as well, because we tend to claim that we know something. If I am an expert in the supply chain for the past 20 years, then I cannot actively listen to those who just entered into the market, and frankly speaking, those who have the full and proper, the truth insights of what's going on. And this problem we do experience in the higher level, and I'm talking about the executives, the operation managers, and even in the board level. So it is driving us to develop inability to dive into the truth, into the realities that we live in. So this is a quick market study in Saudi Arabia, where most of the SMEs, the startup companies, and even some of the entrepreneurs, they just focus on the first PL. And just a few of them just focus on the 2 PL. And you can see in the graph that when you go down into the proper establishment of SCM, you will end up having just really a few of big companies that who adapt into this paradigm. So the other question, but I'm going to answer for this. how to align to all of what I've said before. When we said that by the year 2016 and 15, that the whole market going towards what we call customer-centric approach, then that is not something we can take in granted. And actually, we have to focus on the accuracy, flexibility, and the speed to respond. When Sam mentioned in the previous session how iTunes were able to really come up with a business model that have kind of an instant response to the customers, he was absolutely right, because that is the right approach. Apple has been shifted from a super failure company into an excellent company in just no second, because they were able to identify what the customers really need. And also Amazon warehouse, the biggest Amazon warehouse, is 1 million square meter. Do you think that a company by its own can manage such a thing? These kind of services has to be given to the experts. And you as a business leader have to focus on whatever you have in hand. And also to be really close to the partners, Amazon invested in acquiring around 10% of the shares of all the partners they're tying up with. And Apple iTunes as well, as I said before, it ensures that they have immediate and instant customer response. And that is one component. The other component is the value system. Again, to create value, we need to pause and reflect of whatever strategies we have at our companies in terms of splitting the focus. If I am excelling and do kind of a retail business where I do care and my experts is just not beyond the shelves management and identifying the immediate customers' needs, then I have to give the luxury to the experts to manage the supply chain. Because if I don't do so, I'm going to go back in the 80s. There were two problems. The first problem was running out of products, SKUs at shelves. And we're missing opportunities here of daily sales. And the second one is to have overstocks at our warehouse, which by the rule of thumb is kind of 25% of the operations budget. So that is, these two elements are really, really scary in terms of how to move forward. The third part is the sales channels. Again, when I tie up with a partner in the supply chain industry, I can have the leverage of having proper channels, or I would say in the coming slides, the footprints. And the final one is the operating models, where we have to plan, make, source, deliver, and return as well. Finally, the assets footprints, which I was talking about, and that takes care of where my presence at the region I'm operating at. And one of the solutions, if you heard of the term kritsu. Kritsu is a Japanese term where it's a kind of a legal term actually, to form a partnerships with your partners that you have sort of win-win situations with. Then you have a sort of a legal arrangement where you ensure that your problems are addressed before your competitors, and you become like really a partners rather than being focusing in their jobs or them being focusing in yours. So the aim here today, and my message to the businessmen, is to rethink of the models. When Prince Mohammed bin Salman said that Niyom is only for dreamers, he wasn't wrong, he was absolutely right, and we need to reflect on our strategies before that day comes and we're not ready to act properly in that domain. So for those who really have 1PL, they need to understand if they really need that services, or they just end up as the Icarus paradox suggests, that we just move forward and we realize that we're moving without the proper equipments and without the right tools to move forward. And then again, we deteriorate the business we are leading or the companies we have established towards the 5PL or LLP, which is a new term in the industry as well. That is my message to you. Thank you for listening and have a good day.